My name is David Kessler, Forest Service badge number 1172309. 31 years active, based out of Region 6, Pacific Northwest. Most of that time, I served the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest, and no one, not once, ever trained me for what I'm about to tell you. You don't walk into this line of work expecting mystery. You expect tree counts, fire watch, checking permits, sometimes checking on lost hikers who usually aren't lost at all. Just disoriented city folks who thought they were the next Grizzly Adams. You expect long silences, cold nights, routine. But deep in the backcountry, I'm not talking 2 miles off a service road, I mean deep, where even the animals don't follow the game trails anymore. The rules change. I didn't believe any of that when I started. Thought it was just old-timer superstition, trail gossip, stories to scare the rookies. But stories don't leave claw marks in the aluminum of a lookout tower. Stories don't rearrange cairns that weren't there yesterday. Stories don't go silent the moment you pull out a camera. And over the years, I started hearing more from other rangers. Off-the-record conversations, usually around a fire or in the middle of a double shift. A pattern started to form. Sightings, strange finds, even disappearances. No one wanted to put it in writing, but no one wanted to forget either. What you're about to hear is a compilation of testimonies, all from former U.S. Forest Service personnel. Some quit right after what they found, some retired early, some stayed in, but never stepped foot into deep woods again. And a few? Well, they were never heard from again at all. These aren't ghost stories. They're not creepypasta. They're reports, case logs, voice recordings. Some handed off to me personally. Some mailed in plain envelopes with no return address. A few recovered from drives and handheld recorders found buried in ranger lockers that should have been emptied years ago. One was found behind a file cabinet, wedged in the crack between concrete and metal. And the tape? It still played. This isn't about belief. This isn't about if it's true. This is about what was found. There's 18 of them. 18 documented discoveries that still echo through the parks and forests of this country. And every one of them should have been national news. But instead, they were sealed, redacted, silenced, reassigned, or conveniently lost in agency purges. And let me be clear, the men and women who gave these reports, they weren't thrill seekers. They weren't paranormal investigators. They were trained, certified, federal employees, people like me. And if you're wondering why they stayed anonymous, it's because the ones who spoke publicly, they didn't stay employed long. You see, there's this quiet understanding within the Forest Service. Some things are just not to be discussed. Like the fire towers that still pick up transmissions from operators long since dead. Or the trail markers that change shape overnight. Or that stretch of forest in Northern California where no bird has been heard since the late 80s. No wind either. Just a pressure you feel in your teeth. Some areas you're told to avoid entirely, not by email, not in print. Just quiet, face-to-face conversations, a hand on the shoulder, a look in the eye. Don't patrol that ridgeline after dark. If you hear music in the trees, walk the other direction, fast. And if you find bones out there, animal or otherwise, don't stop. Don't take pictures. Don't touch. Why? Because bones mean it's marked territory, and something is watching to see what you'll do. These are stories shared by those who couldn't keep quiet any longer. And frankly, I'm one of them. You want to know why? Because after all these years, I still see it when I close my eyes. Still hear it when the wind cuts just right across the windows of my home. I still remember what I found on October 23rd, 1999, a discovery I never reported because I was warned not to. Warned by someone I trusted. Someone who later disappeared without ever packing up their gear. That's where we'll begin. But I want to be clear on one thing. This isn't entertainment. This is a warning. And if you think these forests are just trees and trail signs and gentle rivers, you haven't been far enough in. So before we begin, if you're watching this on Mindfuel, understand what this channel really is. We don't do cheap scares, no scream stings, no jump cuts. We document. We preserve the testimonies others tried to bury. We give voice to what got scrubbed from the official record. And if you've ever wondered whether something's off in those woods, whether your feeling of being followed was more than just nerves, then don't forget to subscribe, because the deeper we go, the less you'll trust what you thought was just wilderness. And it starts with a trail I was ordered to close before anything was found. It was early spring, 2004. Snow was still melting in pockets near the high country, but the lower trails had opened. That's when the call came in, Section B, near Tumalo Ridge. A hiker reported seeing what he called a structure deep off-trail, 2 miles past the boundary of marked land. Said it didn't look old. Said it looked wrong. Now, that's not uncommon. People mistake tree trunks for cabins, shadows for foundations. But the call got escalated because the man was adamant. He had GPS coordinates, a photo that looked, and I'm quoting, "too clean to be real." I was out of Region 6 at the time, but the responding team included a ranger I trained with, Greg Talbot. He had 13 years in. Calm head. Logical thinker. He wouldn't have filed what he filed unless it really shook him. Talbot and his partner hiked out the next morning. It wasn't even on the map, no trail access, no historic records, but there it was. Just like the hiker said, a staircase, 12 steps, old colonial style, carved wood, banister intact, no rubble, no supports, no house, no sign of foundation, concrete, brick, or even indentations in the soil. Just stairs. Sitting in the middle of a clearing where the tree line curved unnaturally outward, like something had pushed the trees back. Here's where it gets strange. The stairs were clean, not weathered, no moss, no bark fall, no leaves, despite being surrounded by untouched forest. And the ground around them? Not disturbed. No footprints, no drag marks, not even broken grass blades, as if the structure had been lowered into place without ever touching the surrounding area. Now. Greg's partner didn't want to approach, said it felt wrong, said he felt something in his chest tighten when they got within 20 feet. But Greg? He was curious. He'd seen ruins before, stone chimneys, cabin beams, even grave markers half swallowed by the forest. This was different. He climbed it, step by step, slowly, stopped at the top, looked around, took a photo. That photo never made it to the report. Later that night, the team camped at the base of the ridge. They were supposed to hike out at dawn. Only one of them came back. Greg never came out of that forest. His partner, visibly shaken, told the field supervisor that Greg had gone back to the stairs before sunrise. Said he heard Greg talking, not yelling, not panicked, just talking, like he was having a calm conversation with someone. But there was no one else there. Minutes passed, then silence. When the partner finally mustered the courage to return to the clearing, the staircase was gone. Not collapsed, not removed, gone. No indentations where it had been, no drag marks, no trace it had ever existed. And Greg? Never found. No scent trail, no dropped gear. The GPS beacon in his vest? Dead, like someone had crushed it. The internal report, which we later recovered through unofficial channels, states, no visible cause of disappearance, no hostile animal activity, no environmental hazard detected, no signs of mental distress. Case status, closed, unresolved. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, the Forest Service received a brown envelope. No return address. Inside, was a printed photo. Greg standing at the top of the staircase. He was smiling. Behind him, in the trees, a tall figure, blurred, almost translucent. No uniform, no detail, just watching. That photo was never included in the official file, but I've seen it. Once. And I can tell you this. Whatever was standing back there, it wasn't just watching Greg. It was waiting for something. I've since spoken to 4 other rangers from across the country who've reported similar stares, from West Virginia to the Siskiyou Mountains. Always clean, always appearing in places with no access, always followed by a disappearance or an incident we're told not to put in writing. One ranger in Minnesota tried to tag the stairs with a fluorescent marker. The paint never dried. He came back the next morning. The paint was gone, and something had etched his own name into the 3rd step. Backwards. He doesn't work for the service anymore. We don't have explanations, only warnings. So if you ever find yourself off trail and you come across a staircase standing alone, untouched by time, untouched by the world around it, don't climb it, don't touch it, and don't speak around it. We believe they're listening. We just don't know what they're waiting to hear. If this is your first time with Mind Fuel, know this. We don't do this for views. We do this because too many of these stories were sealed in silence. Because someone out there needs to hear them before they make the same mistake. And if you think the staircase was the strangest thing we found, because next we head to Arizona, and the ranger who uncovered a mannequin, breathing, buried upright in a dry riverbed. Subscribe, because these files, they were never supposed to be opened. This next one, it came out of Arizona, Coconino County, just outside of the Mogollon Rim. Ranger's name was Marcus Hale, 8 years in, ex-military, no nonsense. The kind of guy who didn't report every owl call or snap twig like it meant something. But the day he made this report, he couldn't even finish his sentence without trembling. Here's what happened. April 2012. Early spring patrol. Marcus was covering a stretch of trail that had been closed off during winter due to rockfall. Steep switchbacks, unstable ridgelines, but recent landslide mitigation meant it was finally safe to check again. The path cut through a thinned-out patch of ponderosa pine and canyon brush. Nothing unusual, until he spotted something against a tree about 50 yards off trail. At first, he thought it was just another deer, maybe roadkill dragged in by scavengers. But as he got closer, the details stopped making sense. The deer was upright, pressed against the trunk of a thick pine, like someone had stood it up and somehow made it stay there. There was no rope, no wire, no support of any kind. Its legs were stiff, locked, like rigor mortis had set in while it was standing, which, according to any vet tech, should be impossible. Then he got close enough to see the face. No eyes, not gouged out, not injured, just missing. Hollow sockets, no trauma, no bleeding, as if the eyes had never formed. Smooth flesh at the edges, like skin grown over where the sockets should have been. And yet the rest of the body was perfectly intact. No predator marks, no bloating, and strangest of all, no smell. The deer had been dead clearly, but there was no decay, no insects, no birds had touched it. It was like it had been placed there. Marcus backed off, took photos, logged the coordinates. Forest Service told him to install a trail cam and check back in 72 hours. He did, but by the time he returned, the deer was gone. No tracks, no drag marks, no disturbance in the pine needles, like it had never been there, except the bark where it had leaned, still indented, still wet with some kind of residue, clear, slick, and cold to the touch, even in 80-degree heat. He checked the trail cam. The footage started normal. Wind, birds, one small raccoon scurrying past. Then, just after 2:12 a.m. on the second night, something appeared in frame. Not walked. Appeared. One frame, it wasn't there. The next, it was. Too tall to be human. Skin like stone, stretched over joints that bent wrong. It moved, without walking. Not hovering, but shifting, like a mirage snapping forward inch by inch. And it was dragging something behind it. Another deer, this one limp, fresh. It stopped at the base of the tree, lifted the deer, effortlessly, pressed it upright, just like the first one, and then it turned its head toward the camera. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, blank surface, like clay before it's carved. The next 30 seconds of the footage? Gone. Just static. Then a final frame. The camera tilted sideways as if something had pressed down hard enough to warp the casing. That camera was never found. Marcus turned in the backup SD card immediately. And, for his own safety, he made a copy. He never showed it to anyone officially, but unofficially, he shared it with a retired ranger friend. That friend shared it with me. I watched it once. It's not the kind of thing you forget. The way the animal just stood there, propped by invisible force, lifeless but untouched. The way that thing moved, not hunting, not feeding, just collecting, placing, arranging. It didn't want food. It wanted something else. And here's what's worse. The cam caught 3 separate visits over the course of 5 days. Each time, it brought a new deer. Each time, it added to the arrangement. And each time, the animals had no eyes. Eventually, the Forest Service reclaimed the area. New trail markers, rockfall warnings. But there's no mention of the events. No file, no evidence. Just a brief maintenance log note that reads, "Vegetation reclaimed. Unstable root structures resolved. Wildlife disturbance unconfirmed." Unconfirmed. Because officially, nothing ever happened. But Marcus? He quit within a year, moved to Nevada, never set foot in a forest again. He gave me one last warning, just before he disappeared from contact altogether. He said, "If you see a deer standing up, run. And don't bother looking for its eyes. It's not looking at you with them anyway." This is mind fuel. We don't turn away from the reports the system buries, we uncover them, one story at a time. So if you've ever looked into the trees and felt like something looked back, you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like these. Because what's waiting in the dark? Doesn't want you to know it was there until it's far too late. A radio still transmitting, a voice on loop, from a man who vanished in 1974. There's a section of trail in the Bridger-Teton National Forest that rarely sees hikers. Too remote, too steep. And it wasn't even officially cleared for public use until 2017. The maintenance crew that opened it up, they were just supposed to reflag the overgrowth, assess erosion, and install one small footbridge over a runoff channel. Nothing complicated, but they didn't finish, because on the second day in, just past mile marker 3.6, they found something that topped the entire project. A hole, perfectly round, dead center in the middle of the forest floor. Now we've seen sinkholes, we've seen collapsed dens, rock splits, old mining shafts. But this wasn't any of that. This thing wasn't natural. It was symmetrical. So much so that one ranger on site said it looked like it had been cut with a machine, roughly 4 feet across. Depth unknown. The first branch dropped in, never made a sound at the bottom. No echo, no clatter, just silence. The crew flagged the area and radioed it in. The next morning, 2 Forest Service techs and a senior ranger were flown in to document it. They set up distance markers, basic tools, a small cordon. But before they even stepped within 20 feet, one of them said she felt pressure in her ears, like descending too fast in a plane. She stepped closer. The pressure turned into whispers, At first, she thought it was the wind. Except there was no wind that day. Flat air, dry, still. And yet, the sound didn't stop. She stepped even closer. Her breathing got uneven. The team lead noticed her eyes losing focus, like she was listening to something from deep underground. Something only she could hear. She turned to him and asked, "Did you hear that boy just now?" He hadn't. They called it for the day, pulled back. But that night, in camp, 2 others reported hearing voices, soft, urgent, calling from the woods. They couldn't make out the words, only the tone, like someone lost, like someone in pain, like someone they knew. The following morning, they returned to find the soil around the pit disturbed. Not dug up, not dragged, disturbed, as though something underneath had pressed upward. They dropped a weighted audio recorder on a line, lowered it slowly, foot by foot. The device made it 23 feet down before the signal cut out completely. Not static, not silence, just gone, like it ceased to exist. When they reeled it back in, the casing was warped, softened, like it had been exposed to extreme heat. But the rope was ice cold. They pulled the crew, logged the pit as an environmental hazard, backfilled the area with rock and brush. But here's where it gets worse. 3 weeks later, a hiker ignored the closure signs, took the unmarked trail. He came out 2 days later, barefoot, dehydrated and disoriented. He kept repeating the same phrase. "It knew my name." When asked what it was, he started screaming. Wouldn't stop until they sedated him. He was transferred to a facility near Jackson. Refused visitors, and every time he heard the sound of gravel shifting under boots, he'd go still and whisper something under his breath, like he was listening again. That trail was permanently closed. Removed from public maps. The pit never officially documented. But a month later, a ranger doing fire survey noticed something strange near that same location. A ring of flattened pine needles, perfectly circular, and, in the center, a single human tooth, clean, polished, like bone. The pit had returned, or maybe it had never left. One of the senior rangers from that project eventually retired. He agreed to speak with us, off record, only if we didn't show his face. And the one thing he said that stuck with me more than anything else was this. If you ever find something in the woods that doesn't echo, walk away, because echoes mean life. That pit wasn't made for the living. This is mind fuel. We bring these stories out because someone has to, and we'll keep going, as long as they let us. So if you've ever stood in a forest and heard your name when no one was near, or felt drawn toward a sound you knew wasn't wind, hit subscribe, because the next chapter might be closer to your trail than you think. Coming up, a patrol team in Utah uncovers a burned tent in pristine forest, no fire damage around it. Inside, a sleeping bag zipped from the outside, and the GPS says the camper never left. August 2015, Northern Oregon, Mount Jefferson Wilderness. The area had just reopened after the Santiago Ridge Fire, a brutal burn that scorched over 12,000 acres and shut the region down for nearly 9 months. When the fire line finally stabilized, the Forest Service sent in small teams to assess recovery zones, verify trail safety, and inspect any lingering hazards. One of those teams, 3 rangers from Region 6, were assigned a westward sweep, checking a hard-to-reach basin near Slide Creek. It was supposed to be nothing more than scorched earth. The satellite data was clear. Everything in that basin had burned. Old-growth timber, hunting cabins, even the ranger supply shed from the 1970s. All of it gone. But halfway through the sweep, Just beyond the remains of a melted weather station, they found a cabin, standing, untouched, solid wood walls, green tin roof, no charring, no heat damage, not even ash on the steps. Everything around it, trees, shrubs, soil, had been incinerated. But the cabin? It looked like it had just been built. Not even the paint was bubbled. The team didn't know what to make of it. They photographed it, radioed in the coordinates, then approached. Door was unlocked. Inside, lamplight. Working lantern on the table, full oil. Wick trimmed, no dust, no soot. A freshly folded blanket at the foot of a neatly made bed. And a coffee cup. Still warm. No one had been reported living there. There were no permit records, no land use claims, no signs of solar or fuel access. But there was a journal, leather-bound. Sitting on the desk beneath a single oil lamp. It wasn't a diary, more like field notes, daily entries, observations. First few pages detailed birdsong, cloud patterns, and weather shifts. Then, entries started changing tone. July 3rd. Saw smoke to the east. Could smell it in the bed frame. July 7th. Ridgeline trees are too quiet. No insects either. I haven't heard frogs in days. July 9th. No ash falling. Fire's coming, but nothing's touched me yet. It feels like the flame is avoiding this place. Then the final entry. Unfinished. It read, "It watches from the ridge." I think it, and then nothing. The pen mark trailed off across the page, ink still wet. That's when the lead ranger noticed something outside. There were no footprints around the cabin, no path, no tire marks, no signs of arrival. Just earth burned clean in a 50-yard radius, and this one perfect structure in the center of it. The crew backed out, called at it in again, told not to disturb anything further. Within 3 hours, the USFS sent a helicopter. Only one man got out. Black jacket, no insignia. Didn't speak to the Rangers. Entered the cabin. Stayed 20 minutes. Came out with the journal. Then told the team, "You didn't see this. You didn't touch this. This never happened." The cabin was gone the next day. Not dismantled, gone. No debris, no indentations in the ground. Like someone had lifted it out of the forest without disturbing a single pine needle. The area was reclassified, marked on internal maps as restricted, geological instability. But no one's ever found a fault line there. And when one ranger pulled archived aerial footage, something strange showed up. The cabin had appeared after the burn. One frame, nothing but blackened trees. Next frame, there it was, fully intact, like it stepped in from somewhere else. I've since spoken to one of the original crew, now retired. He said he didn't believe in anything strange until that day. Said the moment he crossed the threshold of that cabin, something went quiet in his head. Like thought had been replaced by listening. Like the structure was alive. He doesn't go near wilderness anymore. Moved into the city. Keeps a white noise machine on all night. When I asked why, he just said, "I keep thinking about what it was watching and what it was waiting to do when we left." This is mind fuel. We bring the buried stories to light, not because they're easy to believe, but because too many people in too many forests are seeing the same impossible things. Subscribe, because cabins don't survive wildfires and they don't build themselves in the ashes. Next, in the Green Mountains of Vermont, a seasonal worker stumbles onto a stone door. No hinges, no handle. But something behind it started knocking from the inside. There's a trail in the southern edge of the White River National Forest in Colorado, off-grid, unofficial, the kind of trail that doesn't appear on park maps anymore. Old logging road, overgrown, locals know it, rangers avoid it, and if you follow it far enough, 6 miles in, where GPS begins to drift and the signal drops completely, you'll come across a clearing. That's where the posters were found. September 2020. 2 junior rangers doing a post-storm debris check. One was new to the team, the other in her 3rd year. They were clearing fallen branches, checking for downed lines when they noticed paper, weathered but still legible, stapled to a tree. Then another, and another. 10 in total. Evenly spaced, all stapled chest height, facing the center of the clearing, like someone had placed them with careful intention. Each one was a missing person flyer. Same person, same face, same name. Jamie Wells, age 22, height 5 feet 6 inches, last seen August 14th. Date never changed. Photo never changed. No variation in printing, no differences in ink or wear, all identical. They looked manufactured, laser printed, not handwritten or copied, clean, centered margins. A number listed at the bottom, 10 digits, no area code. That was the first flag. The second? The Forest Service had no record of anyone by that name reported missing anywhere in the state. Local PD, nothing. State records, nothing. Even the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System turned up empty. No one named Jamie Wells had disappeared from Colorado or anywhere on or near that date. But the Rangers brought the posters in anyway. They were logged, photographed, archived, just in case. That night, the new Ranger, off duty, plugged the number from the flyer into a burner phone just to see what came up. It rang once, then again. Then a voice answered. Her own voice. Static, garbled, distant. But it was her voice, repeating a phrase over and over. Please don't forget me. Please don't forget me. Please don't forget me. She threw the phone in a river the next morning. Didn't come back to work after that. Transferred out a week later. Wouldn't explain why. The other ranger went back to the site with a senior officer. All the posters were gone. Not shredded, not degraded, just removed. Staples still in the bark. Freshly pulled, but they did find something new. A single Polaroid, taped to the same tree where the first flyer had been. It showed a young woman, shoulder-length dark hair, standing alone in the same clearing. Same time of year, same tree line, no date stamp, no signature, but scrawled across the bottom in red ink. I'm still here. That Polaroid disappeared from evidence 2 days later. The logging road has since been blocked by fallen rock and marked unsafe, though no recent landslide has ever been recorded. And the clearing? It's not visible on satellite anymore. You can trace the trail, tree by tree, right up until the edge. Then the image corrupts, blurs, as if the clearing refuses to be seen. Here's the strangest part. Since that discovery, 4 separate ranger teams across the U.S., in forests from Alabama to northern Utah, have reported finding identical flyers with the same name, same face, same number, but always just 1 flyer per team. Never 10 again, just 1. As if whoever left them is running out of time. No records, no relatives, no official case. It's like Jamie Wells never existed except in the woods, and someone or something is trying to remind us that she did. Or maybe she's still trying to get out. This is Mind Fuel. We document what others delete, because no one disappears without leaving something behind, even if it's just a name on paper that shouldn't exist. So if you ever come across a flyer in the middle of nowhere, one that's not on a trailhead, or bulletin board, or ranger station wall, and the person looks back at you a little too clearly, don't call the number. Don't take it with you. And for God's sake, don't forget the name. Subscribe to Mind Fuel, because the next story takes us into the Green Mountains of Vermont, where a ranger stumbled across a stone door buried in the hillside. No hinges, no handle, but something behind it started knocking. This one came from a ranger outpost in the Monongahela National Forest, West Virginia. A quiet, sparsely trafficked corner of the Appalachians, dense canopy, few marked trails, and entire miles of terrain where the only thing louder than the wind is the stillness that follows it. It happened just past dusk, mid-October, and the only reason this report even exists is because the ranger on duty broke protocol and left his body cam running after hours. His name was Elias Dreyer, 10-year vet, former smoke jumper, zero interest in ghost stories. He'd manned that outpost 5 seasons in a row, said the strangest thing he ever dealt with before, this was a couple tripping on mushrooms who thought the moon was chasing them. That night changed everything. At 6:41 p.m., Elias noted a figure approaching from the tree line, barefoot, stumbling, one arm hanging limp like it had been dislocated. He assumed it was a hiker in trouble. Maybe someone who slipped on wet shale or got turned around. He radioed it in, stepped out onto the porch, but the moment the figure crossed the tree line, Elias froze. The man was covered in blood, not soaked, but streaked, like something had dragged fingers down his chest and arms. His pants were torn, skin scraped raw in places. But that wasn't the part that made Elias reach for the emergency beacon. It was his face. More specifically, his mouth. There wasn't one, no lips, no teeth, no opening, just unbroken skin where the mouth should have been, like the flesh had grown over it, seamless, smooth, as if he had never had a mouth at all. The man collapsed at the edge of the porch, reaching out, wide-eyed, panicked, gasping like he wanted to scream, like he was trying to cry for help. But all that came out was a sound Elias described as wet breathing behind glass. Elias rushed to his side, checked for injuries. No visible wounds aside from abrasions and bruising, but the man's eyes were locked onto him, begging, desperate. He kept pointing behind him, back into the trees. Elias radioed for emergency medical and backup. They told him the help was en route, 30 minutes out. He sat with the man, tried to comfort him, tried not to stare at the face, but then, just 3 minutes before EMS arrival, the man stood up, not gradually, not with effort. He jerked to his feet, unnaturally fast, like something had pulled him upward. He turned toward the trees, paused, and then ran, full speed, into the dark. Elias shouted, tried to follow, but he lost the man within seconds. No trail, no blood drops, no footprints, just forest. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. Search teams were dispatched. They never found a body, never found signs of struggle, no one missing matching that description. And no camera footage from nearby trailheads showed a man entering that area at any time in the previous week. But Elias's body cam caught everything. The footage was scrubbed from the Forest Service servers within 48 hours, but not before it was copied, quietly, by a systems tech who shared it with a private search and rescue forum. It circulated briefly, then disappeared. But I've seen the transcript, and one line stands out. As the man turned to run just before he reached the tree line, Elias whispered something, barely audible. "What are you afraid of?" And the man smiled. No mouth. But the skin shifted, pulled upward, as if the body was trying to remember how to smile, and failed. A forest psychologist who reviewed the report later noted something disturbing. This isn't trauma response. This is symbolic displacement. It's like something removed his ability to scream on purpose. Another ranger who reviewed the case in confidence added, "If something did that to him, then it didn't just want to hurt him. It wanted to make sure no one else ever heard what he saw." There's no record of the man, no ID, no fingerprints, no missing person reports in the region that match. It's as if he never existed. But Elias never returned to the outpost. He turned in his badge 3 days later. moved out of state, and before leaving, he handed a sealed envelope to his commanding officer. Inside was a note that read, "If you see someone running out of the woods, don't stop them. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't try to make them talk." This is Mind Fuel. We follow the stories that were buried under silence, especially the ones that were silenced literally. If you've ever felt like something out there doesn't want to be spoken of, subscribe now, because some warnings aren't shouted. They're left wordless. Coming up next, a Vermont ranger discovers a stone door carved into a hillside. No latch, no lock, but every night, it knocks. This report comes from Northern California, Humboldt County, where the redwoods tower so high they seem to hold up the sky itself, where fog coils through the branches like veins, where the air is still enough that you can hear your own heartbeat, until the forest decides to breathe for you. The tree was first noticed by accident. Ranger Harrison Bell was leading a junior conservation team deep into the backcountry. No public trails, no campsites, just raw, ancient terrain, untouched even by most Forest Service maps. They were cataloging tree rot samples when Bell called the group to a stop. He pointed at a redwood near the bend in the canyon wall, easily 250 feet tall, bark darkened with age. It wasn't marked, tagged, or referenced in any biological records for the area. That wasn't what made it strange. What made it strange was that it was moving. At first, they thought it was a trick of the light, heat shimmer, wind illusion, optical distortion from staring too long through the canopy. But no, the trunk was expanding and contracting, very slowly, very subtly, like the rise and fall of a massive chest. One of the volunteers, a college student from Oregon State, said it looked like it was breathing. Ranger Bell laughed it off, nervous but curious. He approached the tree, laid his palm against the bark, and immediately collapsed. No convulsions, no cry, no signal, just dropped like a marionette with its strings cut. The team rushed to his side. He was alive, pulse rapid, skin cold, eyes wide open, but he couldn't speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out, not even breath. They evacuated him. He was flown to a trauma center in Eureka, still unresponsive. 3 days passed before he said his first word. Underneath. Medical scans were clean. No brain trauma, no stroke, no respiratory damage. Just a silence that gripped him and held tight. When questioned about what happened, Ranger Bell offered only fragmented phrases. "It's not a tree. It's a gate. It inhales when it's hungry. I didn't see the roots. I saw ribs." He didn't return to work. What happened next was buried. 2 members of the original junior team returned to the site on their own, days later. They had marked the GPS in secret, wanted to document the anomaly, but they never made it back. A rescue team was deployed 48 hours later. Their packs were found 2 miles off course, gear scattered, undisturbed. Both sleeping bags were zipped, no signs of a struggle. But nearby, on the moss beside the creek, someone had carved a sentence into the bark of a fallen log with a multi-tool. We heard it breathe, and then it heard us. To this day, that area is off limits. The coordinates were redacted from official records. The redwood in question, gone. Satellite shows a blank patch of shadow where the tree once stood. Some believe it collapsed. Others say it was never really a tree at all, just something the forest grew around. A living thing pretending to be still. One botanist from the University of California reviewed the report under NDA. When asked if it was possible for a redwood to move like that, he laughed. Then he asked to see the bark sample. He left the room 5 minutes later and refused to answer any more questions. His only comment: "That wasn't tree tissue. That was cartilage." This is mind fuel. We tell the stories that can't be printed, because the forest is older than any map. And sometimes it breathes back. Subscribe, because the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. And next, a ranger in Vermont finds a stone door sealed into the hillside. No lock, no seam, but from behind it, something knocks. The following account comes from the Bitterroot Range, Montana side, early spring 2016. The trail had just thawed out after the last snow. 5 rangers were assigned to reflag an elevation corridor that hadn't been touched in years. Not remote enough to be considered off-grid, but isolated enough that people usually didn't pass through unless they had a reason. And this group had no idea what was waiting in the trees. The first crow was spotted within the first mile. It perched high, maybe 40 feet up, unmoving. At the time, no one thought anything of it. Crows are common in that region. Sharp, social, observant. But 10 minutes later, there were 3 more. Then 7. Then a full ring of them. One of the rangers, Mike Sloan, was the first to say something out loud. He looked up and muttered, half joking, "Feels like we're walking through a funeral." Because that's what it looked like. The crows weren't flapping or shifting. They weren't making noise, no rustling, no caws. They just sat perfectly still on the outer limbs of the trees, watching. Another ranger tried to clap loudly to startle them. Nothing, no reaction. They stayed another 4 miles in formation, moving tree by tree, ahead of the rangers, behind them, and always to the sides, like they were keeping the group inside a ring, like something was being herded. By mile 6, the group had stopped speaking. Even the sound of boots on pine needles started to feel wrong, like it didn't belong there anymore. Then something changed. The lead ranger noticed the crows no longer shifted from tree to tree after them. Now, they were always waiting at the next bend, already perched before the rangers arrived, as if the birds knew the route, as if they were guiding something. They called in a status report to HQ, normal, calm, routine. Because what do you even say, we're being followed by birds? It didn't feel urgent, not until they stopped for water, and realized the silence had gotten deeper. No insects, no branches creaking, just the slow pulse of windless air, and 100 black eyes, watching. That's when Ranger Sloan noticed something that made his blood run cold. The birds weren't watching them. Their heads were tilted slightly back, toward the trail behind. He turned, looked. Nothing there. But the crows remained focused, frozen, like statues. He whispered it to the group. "They're not watching us. They're watching something following us." That was enough. They left the trail, cut the mission, made a wide arc back to base using emergency markers. But the birds stayed. Every turn, every descent, every detour, always waiting, until the very edge of the park boundary. Then, in unison, they vanished. No flight, no flutter, just gone. Like smoke, dispersed in wind. Ranger Sloan quit that same week. No incident, no injuries, just a resignation letter placed on his supervisor's desk. One line scribbled at the bottom in pen. It wasn't the birds. It was what made them stay. That section of the trail has since been flagged as unstable, washed out, impassable. But none of that's true. I've seen the drone footage. The trees are standing. The path is clear. The only thing missing are the sounds. That entire stretch of forest plays like a muted video feed. Not broken, not damaged, just listening. And every now and then, buried in the static, you'll hear a soft flutter. Once, then never again. A retired ornithologist reviewed the ranger report. He said, "Crows only go silent like that when a predator is near, and for them to do it in unison, something unnatural passed by, something old enough that even they couldn't warn against it." This is mind fuel. We follow what the animals already know, Because sometimes the only thing braver than facing the woods is turning your back to them. Subscribe. Because next, a Vermont ranger on solo patrol discovers a sealed stone door in the forest hillside. No mechanism, no sign of human carving, but something from the other side starts knocking. In the summer of 2019, something descended on Shenandoah National Park that didn't belong. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person, and it wasn't a storm. It was fog, but not the kind that drifts in off the ridge or rises gently from the valley floor. This fog moved with intent. It started just after 4 p.m. on June 12th. Warm day, light wind, no weather alerts. The sky had been clear all morning. 3 separate ranger teams confirmed it. Even the nearest meteorological stations were silent. No predictions, no patterns, and yet, it came anyway. From the west slope, near Hawksbill Summit, it rolled in fast, like it had been waiting just beyond the ridge, thick, dense, colorless. Not the soft gray of mountain mist. This was almost white, blinding. It swallowed trees whole, swallowed sound too. 2 rangers at the base of the summit radioed in what they first thought was a pressure anomaly, static in their ears, tightness in their chest. Then, at 4:17 p.m., they both heard the first scream. Not 1, not 2, but dozens, faint, scattered, like voices were echoing from inside the fog, but with no source. They described it like this. It was screaming from every direction, but never from the same place twice. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was something that wanted to sound like both. And the deeper the fog pushed into the valley, the louder it got. A hiking group, 3 adults, were last seen near Cedar Run Trail at 3:40 p.m. They were supposed to return before dark. They never did. By the time the fog receded, just after 5 p.m., they were gone. No gear left behind, no tracks, no signs of panic or struggle. It was as if the air had just taken them. Search and rescue launched immediately. Over 60 volunteers, dogs, drones, nothing, not a footprint, not a scrap of clothing, not even heat signatures on the infrared. But 3 strange things were found. First, 28 yards from the last known location of the group, searchers found a small cairn, 7 stones, perfectly stacked, fresh. None of the stones matched the surrounding terrain. Second, a ranger reviewing body cam footage from earlier that day noticed a flicker in the lens as he passed the summit bend. One frame, just one, contained a blurred silhouette inside the fog, too tall to be human, too wide in the shoulders, and no discernible face. Just blackness, where the face should have been. And third, a note, written in black marker on the back of an emergency trail map, wedged into the bark of a dead pine 15 feet off the ground. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. It read, "Don't call out." It's using their voices. To this day, those 3 hikers are still listed as missing. The case has gone cold. The weather logs were edited afterward, updated to reflect a low-lying temperature inversion that conveniently explained the fog. But the rangers who were there, they remember. One of them, now retired, put it best. That wasn't fog. That was a curtain. Something stepped behind it more and pulled them through. This is mind fuel. We uncover the things the sky won't warn you about. And the forests? They keep too many of their storms quiet. Subscribe, because fog doesn't shriek, and when it does, you're not supposed to answer. Next, a ranger in Vermont hikes off trail to log rockslide debris and discovers a stone door carved straight into the hillside. No seams, no hinges, but every night it knocks. We thought these were isolated incidents. One missing hiker, one distorted voice, one pattern of bones, but they weren't isolated. They were building towards something. We didn't see the bigger shape until we stepped back and looked at every log, every sighting, every unexplained silence, and realized it was all circling the same dark center. And right when we thought we'd heard the worst, we found what the forest buried last. The next file isn't a warning. It's a message from whatever's been listening. And now, it wants to speak. End of part 1. Part 2 continues the search for answers hidden in the last recordings, and what was waiting at the end of the final trail. This is Tower 9. I just saw someone walk past the old fire break, but he looked like me. Same jacket, same pack. He waved,